Welcome back, everybody, for another deep dive. This time we're going to be looking at some architectural plans, and this is not just any building, it's a pavilion. But it's kind of like imagine a really high-end treehouse for grown-ups.
Yeah, it really is interesting how this blurs the line between nature and a built environment. It's called Concept 3838, and it's almost like it's growing out of nature instead of just being in nature.
I see that. I see that a lot in these plans. And the architect uses this term biomimicry a lot. So you're saying it's not just shaped like a tree, but it's actually like learning from how trees work.
Yeah, that's exactly it. It's about taking inspiration from nature's processes and forms. And actually, you can see that in the structure if you look closely at the pavilion. The way that the columns are wider at the top and they connect to the roof, that's really mimicking the way tree branches distribute weight and grow.
So it's not just about aesthetics then, it's about function.
Absolutely. Biomimicry is really all about finding these really elegant and sustainable solutions that have already been perfected by nature. And we've had millions of years of that, so...
I mean, that's so cool. And did I mention, there are actual trees growing through the roof?
Yeah, that is definitely a striking feature. I think the architect included it to really push this idea of integrating nature and take it to an extreme. But I think it also creates this incredible interplay of light and shadow as the sun filters through the leaves.
You know, it's clear they're going for this natural vibe. But holding up a roof with trees? I mean, that takes some seriously strong wood.
Right. They're most likely using engineered timber for this, something like glulam or CLT, which is incredibly strong and sustainable. CLT especially. It's perfect for projects like this. Large scale. Complex. Because it has that structural integrity needed for a unique design, but it also has the environmental benefits of using wood.
So not only does it look like a tree, it's actually built with, I guess we could call it, nature's super plywood.
It seems like the architect really thought of everything. They had a vision and carefully chose these materials to bring it to life. And this type of timber construction allows for those really beautiful flowing lines and organic curves that you see in the design. You couldn't achieve that with traditional building materials.
So speaking of construction, this can't be a simple build, right?
Oh, definitely not. Definitely not. There would need to be a lot of engineering and logistical planning, especially with the integration of the live trees. I mean, imagine trying to coordinate, getting those curved, massive wooden sections into place, and then also making sure that the openings for the trees are lining up perfectly.
Oh gosh, that's giving me anxiety. It would be quite a sight to see it all come together, though, almost like a giant 3D puzzle.
It would be a fascinating process to be able to watch them put this together. It really highlights the challenges and also the rewards of pushing the boundaries of architectural design. I think this pavilion is a testament to what we can do with biomimicry and just the incredible things that we can achieve when we combine nature's wisdom and human ingenuity.
I mean, it's definitely an inspiring concept. I can't argue with that. But you know me, I always have to think about the practicalities of things.
And some big questions are popping into my head, like,
Yeah.
how are they going to protect this thing from the elements? I mean, those openings in the roof are gorgeous. But what happens when it rains?
Well, that is a valid concern.
Yeah.
And I think that's one of the potential weaknesses of this design, as it stands now, at least.
Exactly.
Yeah, weather protection is something that would have to be addressed. A completely open roof might work in some climates, but for most locations, you would need some way to handle rain and snow.
So how do you protect a pavilion? That's essentially designed to let the outside in. I mean, wouldn't a traditional roof kind of defeat the purpose?
Right. You wouldn't want to just slap a normal roof on there, because that would totally clash with the aesthetic. But there are some clever ways to work around that and still stay true to that whole biomimicry concept.
Okay. Now, I'm intrigued. They could use like a retractable roof system, kind of like what they use in those modern stadiums. Imagine.
Yeah.
It's sleek, almost invisible. And when the weather's good, it just retracts into the structure. And then when it starts to rain, boom, it just glides back into place.
That's so cool. It's like magic. But wouldn't a solid roof, even a retractable one, block out all that amazing natural light the design is going for?
Not necessarily. They could use a transparent material for the roof, maybe something like ETFE. It's lightweight, durable, and it lets through a lot of light, so you'd still have that visual connection to the sky and all those changing patterns of sunlight.
Problem solved. Retractable, transparent roof, best of both worlds. But even with a super high-tech roof, I'm still thinking about those wooden curves, all those intricate details. How are those going to hold up over time? Especially with trees growing right through them. Talk about a maintenance nightmare.
Yeah, you're right. That is another big challenge with this design. Wood, even the engineered kind, it needs regular maintenance to prevent weathering and rot. and insects. And then you add in trees growing through it. I mean, it could be quite the headache.
Ugh. Can you imagine having to trim a branch that decided to grow right through your living room?
Exactly. So they'll need to really think about the wood treatments and
Okay.
ongoing maintenance. They might need to use some durable species of wood, like maybe cedar or redwood, which
Mm.
are naturally resistant to decay. And I'm thinking they'll probably have to have a regular schedule of inspections and pruning just to keep those trees under control.
So this pavilion, it's not just a building, it's like a living, breathing organism. That needs constant care.
In a way. Yeah, but that's part of what makes biomimicry so cool. It reminds us we're not separate from nature. We're interconnected with it. And just like a garden, this pavilion would need that ongoing care and attention if it wants to thrive.
Okay, I'm starting to see the bigger picture here. It's not just about making a nice space, it's about respecting nature and working with it, not against it. But let's be honest here. This pavilion, as cool as it is, seems a little bit empty. It's a beautiful structure.
Yeah.
But what would you actually do in there?
That is a good point. It seems like the design is mainly focused on the structural aspects and the visual aspects. But to make it functional and inviting, they could add some other elements.
Yes. Let's brainstorm. What can we add
Yeah.
to make this pavilion more than just a really pretty sculpture?
Well, they definitely need to think about seating. Right now, it's just a wide open space. Imagine you create these cozy seating areas tucked into those curved nooks, maybe like built-in benches, or even hanging installations that flow with the organic shape.
I love that. Imagine swinging in a little cocoon, surrounded by trees and light. It would be so peaceful and quiet.
Right. And they could add some landscaping around the edges for that extra tranquility, maybe some low-maintenance ground cover, or a little water feature.
Ugh. And lighting. We need some amazing lighting to show off those curves in the wood and make it feel warm and inviting at night. Like imagine these soft glowing orbs hanging from the ceiling, like fireflies.
I love that. And maybe some spotlights that could illuminate the trees growing through the roof. That would be such a cool focal point at night. They could really play with the light and shadow to emphasize all the unique parts of the design.
You know, I have to admit, I was a bit skeptical at first. Trees growing through the roof sounded like a nightmare. But now I see how it could work. It really changes how you think about designing buildings.
That's what biomimicry is all about. Nature has already figured out so many design problems, and this pavilion shows us how we can learn from those solutions and use them for our own needs.
I am fully on board with this biomimicry thing. But before we get carried away with our treehouse dreams, I think there's a bigger question we need to think about. So we've been talking about this pavilion as like a standalone thing. But could this whole biomimicry idea be used on a bigger scale?
Right.
Like, could we see entire buildings or even whole cities that use these same principles?
That's a really interesting question, and it's one that a lot of architects and urban planners are thinking about right now. I mean, we're already seeing this shift towards more sustainable and biophilic designs in a lot of buildings. I think the real challenge is how to scale those concepts up while still making sure everything is practical and meets all the safety rules.
Right. It's one thing to have trees growing through the roof of this little pavilion, but imagine trying to do that with a skyscraper.
Yeah, exactly. You have to think about all sorts of things, like
Yeah.
how strong the structure is, and fire safety, and whether everyone can access the building. But that doesn't mean we can't still use biomimicry and come up with some innovative ways to apply those principles.
So what would that look like? Like, how can we bring more of nature into our cities, even if we can't have trees growing out of every building?
Well, we can think about green roofs and living walls. Those are becoming more and more common, and they help to improve air quality in cities and reduce all that stormwater runoff. Plus, they create habitats for wildlife. We might even see buildings that have facades that look like the textures of trees, or maybe they use natural ventilation systems that are modeled after termite mounds.
So instead of those concrete jungles, we'll have cities that feel more like,
Aye.
well, actual jungles, buildings that are not just functional, but beautiful and sustainable.
Exactly. Imagine walking down the street and all the buildings are covered in plants and flowers, and there are rooftop gardens everywhere growing fresh food. And the buildings change color with the seasons.
And think about how that would make you feel if we could bring nature into cities, even in little ways. It could help people feel less stressed and improve the air we breathe and help us all feel more connected to nature.
I totally agree. And it's not just about how it looks or how it makes us feel. Biomimicry can actually help us design buildings that are more efficient and sustainable. For example, engineers have studied how birds build their nests, and they've used that to develop building materials that are lighter and stronger.
That's amazing. We can learn so much from nature and use those lessons to create a better future.
Exactly. Biomimicry reminds us that nature has already solved a lot of the problems that we face. We just need to pay attention and be open to learning.
Well, I think this deep dive has been super inspiring. We've talked about this incredible pavilion design and learned about biomimicry and even imagined what our cities could look like if we embraced these ideas.
It's definitely exciting to see how these concepts are developing and think about all the possibilities they hold.
Who knows? Maybe one day we'll all be living in treehouse skyscrapers. But even if that doesn't happen, I think we can all take away something valuable from this conversation. We can all think more about how we impact the environment and look to nature for ideas and be open to new ways of doing things.
I think that's a great takeaway. And remember, even small changes can make a difference. Try adding more plants to your home, or support businesses that are trying to be sustainable, or just spend more time outside.
So true. Thanks for joining me on this deep dive. It's been awesome.
It's been my pleasure. And if this conversation has got you thinking, I hope you keep exploring these ideas, keep learning, keep asking questions, and keep looking to nature